Hello, everyone. Welcome back into the Live and Learn podcast. Hope you're doing well on this Friday, March the 14th. I apologize for being out for the last week. Personal stuff came up. My apartment was flooded and took some time. Still not completely resolved, but I'm happy to be back talking to all of you. It's great to be here, and we have a lot to catch up on. And I realized the NHL trade deadline was last Friday, and you might go, it's a little late to talk about the trade deadline. I'm going to do it a different way. Today, we're going to do divisional comparisons and see where teams stand, how teams are shaping up. I think it's a more interesting way to look at things. We've seen some divisional games already between teams that have acquired players at the trade deadline. We'll see more of them this weekend with a big matchup tonight between the Winnipeg Jets and the Dallas Stars. See, we'll look at that later on in the podcast. Also, it was NFL free agency week. A lot happened. Teams spent a lot of money, a lot to get to. So all that's forthcoming. Next week, Monday podcast, Monday night, we're going to react to the March Madness bracket. The bracket will be out. We'll react to it. We'll talk some about the games that I've been watching a lot of college basketball the last couple of days with the conference tournaments going on. So we'll talk about that on Monday. Wednesday, we'll also I'm going to fill out a bracket because I love it. And we'll talk about some teams I like, some sleepers, the betting angle of it. That'll be Wednesday night on the podcast before it all starts on Thursday at 1 o'clock Atlantic. Also Monday night on the pod, we're talking baseball, a lot of baseball. We're going to talk a little bit maybe at the end of this podcast because there's a lot to get to today. But on Monday, technically Major League Baseball starts on Tuesday morning. The Dodgers and the Cubs are both now in Japan, preparing to play 2 games Tuesday and Wednesday, where the Dodgers will have 2 Japanese pitchers on the mound, which will be phenomenal for baseball. Shohei Ohtani will not be pitching, but he will be DHing. And it's the start of the season in Japan, 2 games, Dodgers, Cubs. We will preview that on Monday night. So that's all forthcoming. But glad to be back. So much to get into this. So let's start. The trade deadline in the NHL was active. More happened than I thought, quite frankly. And it leaves teams in an interesting position on how do you feel? Did you do enough? What kind of position are you going to be in moving forward? Can you win a Stanley Cup? And most people would say that the Atlantic Division is the most competitive division in the sport. I would disagree, and we'll get to the toughest division, but the Atlantic's tough. There's some good teams. We've seen that the last 5 years, the team out of the Eastern Conference has been in the Atlantic Division. We've seen that Tampa, Florida, they win a lot of Stanley Cups. They appear in a lot of Stanley Cup finals. So there's a lot to like there. There's a lot to beat. A lot of teams are envious of these teams. So Toronto, Florida, Tampa, we'll get to Ottawa. Those are the top 3 right now. And it's interesting because you have Toronto in that mix, and they are a volatile situation, whether things are going well or things are going poor. It's there's going to be opinions, there's going to be chatter. And since the trade deadline, Toronto loses to Colorado, a game that really wasn't close, but the scoreboard makes it look close. They defeat Utah in a gimmick after leading 3-0, and they drop a game to Florida last night where I thought they were better in the third period. I thought they had a really good first 5 minutes, but I would say the larger chunk of the game, Florida carried it. So, mixed results. I would say pretty poor results over the last little while for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Deadline, they acquire Brandon Carlo from the Boston Bruins, which surprised me because I didn't think Boston would trade with Toronto, number one. I thought they might hang on to Carlo. I like the player a lot. And they get Scott Laughton from Philly, which made sense all along, pending UFA. Philly knew they were trading him. Scott Laughton, good third-line center. He's got a history with Berube. So it just works. Toronto remains a very competitive team. They remain one of the better teams in the sport. I do think that Toronto can win the Stanley Cup. They need a lot to go right. But I would give their trade deadline a B. I think they tried. They tried on players. They got who they could get. I think they expect players on their roster like Calle Jarnkrok, like potentially, although maybe not, little Nicky Robertson, to have an impact, to play better than they have to, for Max Domi, a guy who we saw some life from last night, to wake up and to have a pulse on that team. But Carlo helps. They needed another defenseman because every team does, but also I think because there's Tanev is a great player. He brings a lot of value. But he's got an injury history. And it can't be a situation where he goes down and your season is screwed. If that's the situation you're in, you were never close to winning anyway. But to bring in Carlo, they needed somebody to play with Morgan Rielly because he hasn't had a set partner all year. He's played, let's be honest, quite terrible the whole year. And they're hoping they can mix. And when they have Tanev and Ekman-Larsson, and they have McCabe and Benoit, and they have Carlo and Morgan Rielly, they have 6D that they're comfortable with and that they think can go on a run. Remains to be seen. Not to mention, they've had some of the best goaltending all year. Has never really dipped from either guy. If anything, their defensive play has significantly decreased, and yet they are still having great goaltending. Their goaltenders keep them in games. So that's all positive. For Toronto after this deadline, the big question is, can they get production from their best players at the most important times? Will Mitch Marner, will William Nylander, and will Austin Matthews step up and play like some of the best players in the world, which they are? And yet they haven't in previous years. And then there's the whole dilemma of the Mitch Marner of it all, where he was asked to waive his no movement clause trying to acquire Mikko Rantanen. He said no, his right. The Leafs would have re-signed Mikko Rantanen for more than $12 million in Dallas, by the way. So just to take a pit stop on this, if this is for Leafs fans out there, you saw Mikko Rantanen take $12 million from Dallas. And you're probably thinking, well, Mikko Rantanen, he's a Stanley Cup champion. He's a better player than Mitch Marner. Sure, I agree with that. Mitch Marner can't take more than 12. Well, no, that's not true, actually. There's no state income tax in Dallas. It's different. Why do players in Florida take less? There's a benefit. 12 in Dallas might be 14 in Toronto, might be 13 and a half. And you might not like that fact, but it's the truth. It's what's going to happen. Mikko Rantanen, Mitch Marner, whoever they bring in, whoever it's going to be, they do re-sign Mitch Marner. It's not going to be for $12 million. I can guarantee you that right now. You can hope it's less than Austin Matthews, which I think is fair, although the salary cap is going up. So why would a player take less money knowing the next time he's available to sign a contract that he's going to be so undervalued? Unless it's for shorter years, unless it's for 4 or 5 years like Austin Matthews did on his last deal, which could happen. But I just wanted to clear the air because that's not going to happen. It's not going to be $12 million. No chance. And nor should it be $12 million either. I don't think in football, I don't think in baseball, in basketball, we ask players to pinch money. Josh Allen didn't take as much as Dak Prescott the other day. True, but he's also making $55 million a year. He got more guaranteed money than Dak Prescott on his contract. So technically he's doing better, and yet he's got a lower cap number. So if you can figure that one out, if the take-home money can be better, then that's how you do it. But that's the intrigue. That's the intrigue. Not, let's hope he takes 12 and God, please stay. We love you so much. He's not going to do that. Just wanted to clear the air. The big worry for Toronto, and really the only team I concern myself with Toronto in this, even after the moves that Tampa has made, and we'll talk about them here in a couple minutes, I think Toronto can beat Tampa in a playoff series. I think Toronto will beat Tampa if and when they play each other in a playoff series. They match. I've talked about it before. They match up well. It's like Edmonton and Los Angeles. They know how to beat that team. So I honestly would be, if it was Toronto, Ottawa, that would be more concerning to me if I was a Leafs fans and playing Tampa, because I think Ottawa can beat Toronto. 100%. They just play different. I think they're more of a problem. But Toronto's got a good team. I don't think they're better than Florida. But they weren't better than Florida prior to the deadline, one could argue. Toronto will not win unless their best players play great, period. They can pick around the edges, get a third line center, get a top four defenseman, which is all great. But if missing in action 34, who takes no heat, by the way, which I find crazy. Mitch Marner, Leafs fans, we hate you. You take all this money. Stop doing this to us. At least he plays the games. Austin Matthews couldn't bother to show up in the playoffs. I don't know his injury. They won't tell us, so I'm not going to say he had some big-time injury. Could have had fucking Loomis. I don't fucking know. Could be anything. But we don't know. The Leafs don't announce injuries. So, could be nothing. Could be crybaby-itis. I don't know. But if he needs to show up, he's got 3 goals in his last 16 games. He's got 1 5-on-5 goal in his last 20 games. One 5-on-5 goal. That's it. He's the best goal scorer in the world. This is a guy who nearly scored 70 last year. Still laboring. Still doesn't have the jump that you'd like to see. Just meh every time he's on the ice. If he doesn't show up and Marner's just okay and Nylander he's typically pretty good, then they won't win. And they'll be in a predicament. Could be a second round, could be a little later than it typically is when they're cleaning out their lockers. But they will be in the same predicament that they are in most seasons, where they are looking around saying, what are we going to do with this team? What's our next move? Do we bring back Mitch on a team that 9 years has won nothing? That in 9 years has never gotten close to winning anything? Tough decisions. Not really, but tough decisions. So it's never about I never thought it was about who you're getting. Their best players have to be better than they typically are. Florida, Bobrovsky has been great the last 2 years. Yeah. But Matthew Tkachuk has been awesome in the last 2 postseasons. Sasha Barkov was amazing in the conference final and in the Stanley Cup final. That's a big reason why they won. The Leafs have never had a playoffs where their best guys were awesome for even 7 games. Never. They should try that strategy. See how it plays out for them, Cotton. But I mean, it's an option. Can happen. It's not against the rules. Just a thought. Florida, who beat Toronto last night in an entertaining game, very playoff-esque, saw a fight, tight checking, no team got to 30 shots, good defensive play in front of both goaltenders, Sam Bennett with a pair of power play goals, Max Domi was close to a Gordie Howe hat trick. In Florida, currently without Matthew Tkachuk, currently without Brad Marchand, who they acquired at the trade deadline, and currently without Aaron Ekblad, who tested positive for PEDs and is out the remainder of the regular season. Now, they did have Seth Jones. Florida deadline, Seth Jones, Brad Marchand, Vitek Vanacek, the new backup goalie, because Spencer Knight was traded in the Seth Jones deal. And Spencer Knight's been very good, by the way, to this point. It's a good job by him. I like Florida. Still, you could say their biggest hurdle, if you will, not Tamash, but just hurdle, is they played a lot of hockey the last couple of years. They're beat up. Do they have enough in the tank to keep going? Seth Jones didn't appear on the score sheet last night. If you just look at the box score, you go -1. And to some people, that means you sucked. To me, it's a useless statistic. He played 28 minutes last night. I thought he played really well. I thought he had an awesome game, Seth Jones. Played 28 minutes. That's a game high for either team. And I love Forsling. That's why I think Forsling's just a stud. A guy that only played 8 minutes last night. But boy, is he. I look at this Florida team. I know they're going to be such a pain in the ass to play for a playoff series. When you think of Marchand, if Tkachuk could come back, that Jonah Gadjevich is a tough SOB. Little guy, but he's tough. AJ Greer is annoying. He's a pest. Had 2 minutes in penalties last night. Had an assist. 4 hits. I love him. Annoyance. And then you got Sam Bennett, who just goes about his business, does his thing. Smart player. Pending UFA, motivated to play well. Could be a Maple Leaf next year. Just saying. That's an annoying, tough, physical team. I don't love their defense. Toronto's defense is better than Florida. No question. Nate Schmidt. Balianskis. That's why Seth Jones and Forsling and even Nico Mikkola, who I think is playing really well since coming over from St. Louis, given a bigger role. He's run with it. He's playing well. So I like it. I like their team. Can they be had? Absolutely. But they're built for the playoffs. And let's just go Toronto and Florida. Because I don't think Tampa's winning this division. I don't think they're currently 6 points back of Florida with a game in hand. I don't think they're catching them. If Florida doesn't win the Atlantic, it will be Toronto. Toronto is 4 points back with a game in hand. Toronto's played 65 games. Florida has played 66. Both Toronto and Florida both have to go on a California Western road trip before the end of the season. They play each other 2 more times, one in Toronto, one in Florida. If we compare, Toronto's got to play the Avalanche. They got the Rangers, but they also have Flyers, Predators, Sharks, Ducks, Blue Jackets, Montreal, Sabres. So you got some games in there that are quite favorable into April. Florida, they got their next 4 on the road at Montreal, at Islanders, at Blue Jackets, at Capitals, Penguins, Utah, Montreal. So I don't think they got Murderers Row schedules down the stretch. Both could have success with it, no doubt about it. Toronto or Florida will win this division. Toronto or Florida will, in my opinion, be in the conference final out of the Atlantic. representing the crossover because they're better than the competition. As I've said, Tampa, solid team. Solid team. I like them. They acquired Yanni Gourde, Oliver Bjorkstrand at the trade deadline. They haven't won a game since the trade deadline, mind you. But they're a good team. But I look at them and I go, I'm not so sure. Don't fully trust what's going on there. I still think they're trying to rebuild a great team, and they still have pieces there like Hedman, like Kucherov. Jake Gensel has been phenomenal. But I look at the Ottawa Senators, who have points in their last 7 games, who have won 5 in a row. They beat the Bruins last night. We've said this for years. It's going to happen this year. Ottawa's making the playoffs. They played 65 games. They are 5 points clear of the Blue Jackets and Rangers. 6 points up on Montreal. Currently, there are 4 teams within 2 points of a playoff spot. Blue Jackets, Rangers, Montreal, Detroit, and Boston. So 5, pardon me. Somebody's getting in. It's going to be Ottawa and somebody else. I think it's going to be the Rangers, personally. Somehow the Rangers will get back in. It could be Montreal. You never know. Montreal's a good team. They are scrappy. They don't quit. A lot of respect for that. But Ottawa, to me, who, if you look at their last in March, beat the Sharks, lose to the Capitals in a gimmick, beat the Blackhawks, beat the Rangers, beat the Red Wings, beat the Flyers, beat the Bruins. Now you can go, well, you beat San Jose, who sucks, beat Chicago, who sucks, beat the Rangers, who aren't that great, Red Wings, Flyers, who stink, and the Bruins. Okay. Yeah. It's true. But I still think they're going to get in. I still think they will. I still think they have. I like their team. They're playing with passion. They're playing. Dylan Cousins has been such a great addition to that team. He's playing incredible. He's got energy back. He's excited to be playing hockey. He's out of Buffalo. He's out of that cesspool of just negativity, which is awesome for him. I'm stoked for him, and he's playing great. Shane Pinto, playing a lot better lately. Ridley Gregg has jump. Shabbat's having one of the best seasons of his career. Linus Ullmark's playing games. He's healthy. He might have the save of the year last night on Mason Lowry, where he just robbed him. Ottawa will likely be a team that loses in the first round. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they could catch Tampa. They are currently 4 points back. They both played 65 games. Could they get hot? Tampa at Bruins, Flyers, at Stars, at Utah, at Vegas. Both have pretty light schedules, to be completely fair. But could Ottawa get in that 3 spot? Tampa ends up in a wild card position? Maybe. If Ullmark is healthy, they can win. They can make the playoffs, and I think they can be a dangerous team. just making the playoffs for that organization is a big deal. I think they can compete to win a round. I really do. We'll see what happens, but I don't mind their team whatsoever. I mentioned off the top, most see the Atlantic as the toughest division in hockey. It's not. It's the Central. Because the Central has Winnipeg, Dallas, and Colorado. And you could make a strong argument that all three of those teams are better than any of the teams in the Atlantic. Seeing Colorado play Toronto last week, they are better than Toronto. Florida maybe could push back on that, but again, I like these three teams a lot. Winnipeg has been the pace car all season long. Winners of 15 of their first 16 games. Still the front runner to win the President's Trophy. Career seasons from Cole Perfetti, from Gabe Vilardi. Seeing great play from Mark Scheifele, Connor Hellebuck, on his way to winning another Vezina Trophy, his second in a row. And yet I feel like the vibe leaving the trade deadline was, oh, Winnipeg, great regular season, but these two teams around you are better. Dallas and Colorado are better than you. There's no way you're winning a Stanley Cup this year. And that's a tough realization. I don't think it's completely untrue, but I wouldn't rule out the Winnipeg Jets. To me, they are still very much a factor. They still are very much a team to watch. But let's start with the aggressive teams, and we'll come back to the Jets. Colorado currently third in the Central Division. Beat Winnipeg last year in the first round, but lose in the second, don't get any farther. They have Mikko Rantanen, a pending unrestricted free agent, and a shocking Friday night trade out of nowhere in late January. He's dealt to the Carolina Hurricanes, and in return, they get Marty Necas and they get Jack Drury. Marty Necas is slid on the wing playing with Nathan MacKinnon. They fit in very well. They play well together. Nathan MacKinnon was the first player this week to get over 100 points this season. He was the MVP last year. Very much could win the MVP again this year with 102 points already on the season, 4 more than Leon Draisaitl. 75 assists, 11 more than Nikita Kucherov for tops in the league. It's also second in power play points. So Nathan MacKinnon balling out. But they didn't sit still. They then got Brock Nelson from the New York Islanders, who fits perfect. Good skater, big body. Add another good player to that mix. And at the end of deadline day, they get Charlie Coyle from the Boston Bruins. The Bruins who waved the white flag for the first time in a long time and said, we can't win, let's sell. Like I said they would and should. So I'm glad the intelligence is still there in Boston. Not to mention, the two goalies that started this year in Colorado are no longer there. They now have Mackenzie Blackwood and Scott Wedgwood. They've done everything to change. They've done everything to get better to try to win, period. Colorado is a fast, dangerous team that just they scare you because they can beat you in so many different ways. Not to mention they have Devon Taves and Cale Makar back there. Josh Manson is healthy. Their goaltending's better than it has been in previous years. Top to bottom, they are one of the best teams in the league. And the funny thing is, it could go either way. I think Dallas is better than Colorado personally, just as a complete team. But one of Dallas or Colorado will be out after the first round. Unless Winnipeg completely falls off a cliff, which I don't think they will, Winnipeg is going to win the Central Division, meaning they will get a wild card team in the first round. Could be Calgary, could be Vancouver. It'll be a favorable matchup, which means Dallas will play Colorado. Battle of the Behemoths, where Dallas has added Mikhail Granlund and Cody Ceci originally. And then they add Mikko Rantanen in a deal with the Carolina Hurricanes, giving up draft picks, giving up Logan Stankoven, but adding Rantanen and then signing him to an 8-year, $12 million extension. Colorado deals him out east, and then a month later, he's back in their division, and they're going to have to deal with him before their season is over. He's got 4 points in his first 3 games in Dallas. He didn't want to be in Carolina. For whatever reason, he didn't want to be in Carolina. That's his prerogative. I don't blame him for doing that. It's your career. I've said that forever. It didn't work. He didn't want to be there. They wanted, and if you listen to the pod, I said, why did they trade for him? He's never re-signing there. I don't think they'll offer him the money that he wants. And since then, it's been a back and forth between Brendan Moore and Rantanen's agent. And I think it's pretty simple. He just didn't want to stay there. He was traded out of nowhere, sent to Carolina right before the Four Nations, and they're like, hey, want to stay for 8 years? And he's like, no. Brendan Moore's a tough coach. They play a different style. He clearly didn't like it, didn't want to stay in Carolina. He's now gone, which is fine. It is. But I say Dallas is better than Colorado, even though Colorado, and this is really splitting hairs, because both these teams are fantastic. Top to bottom, Dallas just has so many ways that they can beat you. They're smart. They got veterans. They got young players. I just like their team. Rantanen, Jamie Benn, Mikhail Granlund, Rupe Hintz is awesome. Wyatt Johnson, who just recently got an extension, is a stud of a hockey player. Maverick Bourque, former QMJHLer, really good player. Which is why Stankoven can leave, because I think Maverick Bourque could be as good or better. They are one of the best teams in the league at drafting. They find young talent every year. They plop them in. Thomas Harley, stud. Miro Heiskanen, who should be back before the playoffs. One of the best D in the league. Cody Ceci. Okay, he's not elite. He played good minutes for Edmonton last year. He fits in. Bottom 6. Perfect. Esa Lindell, they're a good team. Jake Ottinger, good goalie. The Winnipeg Jets aren't as good as those two teams. However, Winnipeg has to win their division. And as I said, I think they will. And also Winnipeg versus Dallas tonight. I might watch that game. I don't know. Could be like a Leafs rerun. Could watch that, but I might watch Winnipeg and Dallas, but just saying. Pretty decent game. Winnipeg needs to win the division. Number one, checklist. For them to have success in the playoffs. Check. Go play, whether it's Calgary or Vancouver or St. Louis if they could sneak in, or Utah. Take care of business. They are better than these teams. Beat them in 5 games or less. Have some time to have a break and watch Dallas and Colorado go through a 7-game hellstorm and hope they beat the hell out of one another. Hope that they just completely mess each other up and you're there to pick the bones. If that doesn't happen and they're healthy, Connor Hellebuyck needs to make a save. To the least point earlier, Connor Hellebuyck's never been good in the playoffs. How about you show up? Make a save for once. Help your team out. Maybe. Bueller. Be nice. Be nice if he could do that. Just saying. But the Jets add Luke Shen. They add Brandon Tanev, pardon me. 2 guys that are, bottom 6 defenseman, bottom 6 forward. Their team is different. They plug and play guys. I mentioned Nemestikov, Velarde, Perfetti, Niederreiter, all having really good seasons. So they can make things happen. Absolutely. They're going to win because their team plays well. And this weekend, if you look at it, you got Stars Jets tonight, Stars Avalanche Sunday afternoon. 2 awesome games this weekend. Awesome games that mean a whole lot. So those are kind of measuring stick games. How they look. What's the game plan? Currently, the Winnipeg Jets have an 8-point lead on the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars do have 2 games in hand. They have a even bigger 13-point lead on the Colorado Avalanche. So Colorado's not catching Winnipeg before the end of the year. Colorado's played 66 games just like the Winnipeg Jets have. As I mentioned, Calgary's currently in that final wild card spot. They are playing Colorado this evening. Vancouver have got the Blackhawks this weekend and Utah this weekend. 2 games they gotta win if they want to get into the playoffs. So that's Winnipeg. I think will play either one of those 2 teams, either Calgary or Utah. You never know. Utah could sneak in. They've been there all year. St. Louis has kind of fallen out of it. They had a bad loss to Pittsburgh last night, so I don't think that's happening. But we shall see. Let's move to the Metropolitan. Story could be Carolina. Sia Rantanen, Sia Nick Cash, Sia Jack Drury. Welcome in draft picks. Welcome in Logan Stankoven. And in typical Carolina Hurricanes fashion, since pardon me, since the trade deadline, they have been on a heater. Beat the Flames, beat the Red Wings, beat the Bruins, beat the Jets, beat the Lightning. Host Detroit tonight. I love Rob Brendamore. I think he coaches a really good system. I think they're a smart team. I love Jacob Slavin, as you all know. Sebastian Aho is a really good player. Svechnikov's a very solid, smart player. Seth Jarvis, good player. Jordan Staal, even at his age, continues to do his role extremely well. Roslovic's had a career year. Martinook's having a career year. Eric Robinson's having a career year. And yet, I look at this team and I go, there's no way that they'll lose in the first round just because of the competition in that division. But I can't see this team winning a Stanley Cup this year. I can't see this team competing for a championship this year. And they tried. But to get draft picks and to get Logan Stankoven, I would have tried. I like going for Marner, but Marner was not going to re-sign there either. I would have kept him and tried to win this year. Here's why. The Metropolitan Division is very flimsy. New Jersey Devils are currently in third. No Jack Hughes the rest of the year. Shoulder surgery. Their best player. No Dougie Hamilton until at least the second round of the playoffs, and they will not be in the second round of the playoffs, so I view Dougie Hamilton as done for the season. They get Cody Glass at the deadline, acquire another depth defenseman. This team is not threatening. This team is not going anywhere. Carolina, if they play New Jersey, they played them 2 years ago in the second round. They beat them in 5 games. I think they'll beat this team in the same number this year. Carolina's beating New Jersey. First round, second round, whatever round it is, they'll beat them. So you know you have a round one. You have one in the bank already. Carolina currently has a 4-point lead on New Jersey with 2 games in hand. New Jersey's not catching them. New Jersey needs everything to go right to seemingly win a game lately, like Edmonton to self-destruct last night. The Blue Jackets are 8 points back in New Jersey. They're not catching them. So it's going to be Carolina, New Jersey in the first round, because I don't think Carolina's catching Washington. So they're going to win that. Then you got Washington, who in all likelihood will be the top seed in the East. They will get the second wildcard team, whether that's the Rangers, whether that's the Blue Jackets, Montreal. They'll be the favorite in that series. But could the Rangers beat Washington in the first round? Sure. Sasha Sturkin's awesome. Maybe Panarin decides to take a shower after a game because he's putting in some effort. A veteran team knows it's the last year. You got Peter Laviolette, who probably knows if we don't have some success here, I'm probably getting fired, so he's going to be on their ass. Could be his last head coaching job of his career. I wouldn't want to play the Rangers. I'd rather play the Blue Jackets. But to even say Washington wins, who's had a great year, My guy, Alex Ovechkin, what a season for a 39-year-old. Protas career year. Dylan Strome playing phenomenal for Washington. Jacob Chikrin, Logan Thompson. Love all of it. But Washington lost to the Rangers in the first round last year. Could they do it again? Why not? But even if it's Carolina, New Jersey, I think Carolina, Washington, I think Carolina can beat Washington in that second round. I worry about their goaltending, like I always do. But they got good players. They know their system. It's by no means a layup for the Capitals to beat the Hurricanes. Then you got Carolina in the conference final, which is what happened, when they played Florida. And they got swept in that series. And every game was decided by one goal. But I don't care. A sweep's a sweep. You didn't win any games. The game could be close. I could give a shit. Did you win? No. It can be that thin of a margin. I'm not leaving it up to that. I'm doing more trying to win this year. Carolina, if they would have kept Rantanen for the playoff run, you don't have to keep him. I think he would have been invested because you're playing in the playoffs. You're trying to win. You're playing with your countryman, Sebastian Aho. They could have went on a run. They still could, but I don't think they can win. And this is what I hate about this team is that they never fully go all the way in. They hang around the periphery. They know they can build a competitive team, but they never build a true winner. And that's the difference between Carolina and Florida, Carolina and Dallas, Carolina and Colorado, and the outlook to me. Even though Carolina will go farther than one of Dallas or Colorado, doesn't mean what they did was right. Carolina remains a good team, but they play in a division that is very much up in the air. Only thing really standing in their way is a Washington team that's having a Cinderella season. Spencer Carberry, Coach of the Year. Alex Ovechkin, 33 goals on the season at age 39. Nobody saw this coming. It'd be a great story if they went deep in the play. Do I think they will? Probably not, no. Probably not. And that leaves the Pacific. Teams that really didn't do much. Vegas was quiet at a deadline for the first time in years. They reacquired Riley Smith from the New York Rangers. Riley Smith had won a Stanley Cup in Vegas, so he was familiar with the team. They bring him back into the fold. Edmonton, who's been pretty dreadful over the last month, added Trent Frederick, who's injured, hasn't played yet, Max Jones, and they get Jake Wallman, big shot defenseman from the San Jose Sharks. And LA adds Andrei Kuzmenko, who was Calgary originally, then in Vancouver originally, then Calgary, then Philly, now LA. He's a suitcase. Not exactly the best worker. Not exactly a guy that gives it his all the time. So So we'll see. Edmonton could still find their way and end up in a conference final. End up in a Stanley Cup final like they were last year. They could flip that script. Now, I think their defensive play is borderline offensive at times. You look at Evan Bouchard, who's a disaster. Matthias Ekholm, whose game has dipped. They had Jake Wallman, who's not a very good defensive defenseman. He's got a big shot, can play the power play. They didn't need him, in my mind. Edmonton's kind of an old, slow team right now that defends pretty horribly, and a team that defends horribly with two subpar goaltenders behind that subpar defense. That all reads out not that great of a team. With Edmonton's loss in New Jersey last night and LA shutting out Washington, LA jumps Edmonton for second spot in the Pacific Division. Now, if you're an Edmonton Oilers fan, you're optimistic saying, we always beat LA. True. They beat them in the first round for 3 straight years. But LA's a good team. LA's better than they have been in previous years. Their structure's better. The way they play. I like their team. Their goaltending, more secure than it has been. Vegas is a good team. This division's still up in the air. Vegas has a 6-point lead on LA, 7-point lead on the Oilers, 9 points back of the Jets. I don't think they'll pass them, meaning they will likely get the first wildcard team. That could very well be Minnesota, which is, I'd like to play. I'm okay playing Minnesota if I'm Vegas. Top to bottom, Vegas is better than Edmonton. But Edmonton has Draisaitl and they have Connor McDavid, which can be the equalizer at times. It has been in the past. Eichel's having a career year. He might reach 100 points this year. He became the first Vegas Golden Knight ever to have over 78 points in a season. That's a new franchise high. What a trade that was. He's been awesome. Thomas Hertl has been consistent. He's got 27 goals, 27 assists in Vegas. They have one guy over a point per game as a forward on the team. But yet, I look around and I go, Howden's a good player. Riley Smith's a good player. Barbashev's a good player. Dorofeyev, great shot, good player. Brandon Saad fits in. Nick Waugh, good player. Whitecloud, Haig. I mean, all these guys, they're all solid pros. They have a good bunch there. Good bunch of guys that compete, that play hard, that know each other. I wouldn't want to play them. Going into the playoffs, Vegas is the best team in the Pacific. Doesn't mean they win? No. Because Edmonton can flip the script, but Edmonton, they don't have the same aura as they did last year. McDavid's having the same kind of feel the same play that Austin Matthews is having in Ontario. He's having it in Alberta. And I could see having that malaise living in Edmonton because Edmonton's a pile of shit. But whatever the reason is, it's happening. They're not a scary team. They're older, and we'll see. But as I mentioned, Winnipeg, Dallas this weekend, fun game. Dallas, Colorado, Sunday afternoon. Toronto, Ottawa tomorrow night. Hockey night in Canada. Big game for both teams. Tampa in Boston this weekend. So some fun games. Some good games on the schedule to track. Vegas has a pair of games out east. So get some teams. Florida in Montreal on Saturday night. Also on Hockey Night in Canada. So some good games on the schedule to track as we get into the last couple weeks of the NHL season. Let's pivot to the NFL. NFL free agency was this week, and teams had money. Teams wanted to spend it, get better. Let's start with the quarterbacks before teams I really like what certain teams did. Really, the ball got rolling with the Seattle Seahawks trading Geno Smith to the Las Vegas Raiders a week ago today for a third-round pick. Pete Carroll, new head coach in Vegas, knows Geno Smith well, was his quarterback there for a couple years. Vegas, who's got Tom Brady, they just re-up Max Crosby to a massive extension. And I like Geno. He was behind a horrible offensive line in Seattle. And he got sacked a lot because he's not the most mobile guy, but he can still move a little bit. He's better than Gardner Minshew. He's better than pretty much anything that they've had there for a long time in Vegas. He's a stopgap quarterback that I think you can trust. He turns the ball over a lot. That's his biggest thing. I think Vegas could be active in the draft when it comes to looking at quarterbacks, whether that is Shedeur Sanders, whether it's later like a guy like Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. Geno's not their quarterback of the future, but he could be their quarterback for the next couple years while they figure this out. But I think in Vegas, they want to be competitive right away. They want to be a playoff team next year. I don't think they will be, but I think they want to be. That's their outlook. Okay. So Geno gone. Seattle now needs a quarterback. And on Monday, they added Sam Darnold, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings. 3 years, $55 million guaranteed, over $100 total. But that's front-loaded, where basically it's a 2-year contract. They can get out of it after the second year if they want to. But Sam Darnold, who had an awesome season in Minnesota, had a rough last 2 weeks, gets over $30 million a year, which is what he wants, gets $55 million guaranteed. So an awesome moment for Sam. I'm happy for him. But the Seahawks traded DK Metcalf, to the Steelers. We'll talk about that. They released Tyler Lockett, their longtime guy. They haven't really added anybody to a bad offensive line, as I just mentioned. They do have Zach Charbonnet, and they do have Kenneth Walker Jr. III, who are two good running backs. However, Kenneth Walker's always hurt, and it's hard to have really great success running the football behind a bad offensive line. Jackson Smith and Jigba is awesome, but they have a poor offensive line. They don't really have great skill position players. It's not a draft that has great receivers. Tedero McMillan out of Arizona is very good. I think he'll be off the board before Seattle is up to select him. So there's question marks, not to mention they should be drafting tackles and not drafting a wide receiver. So this is what I think is going to happen. Sam Darnold gets a lot of money. It's awesome after that start with the Jets and with Carolina and seeing ghosts. He has a career resurgence. I don't think it's going to be that successful for him in Seattle. The coaching was so great in Minnesota. The wide receivers were so good. The tight ends, Kevin O'Connell. Seattle's not a horrible team. By any means, they're not horrible. But they're not great either. They're not an elite team. A lot of holes on that roster. We'll see. Darnold, Geno Smith, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference there. They're two guys that aren't going to change your team either way in a positive note. You can win some games with either. You're not going to win a Super Bowl with either of those guys. Okay. Next guy off the board was Justin Fields signing a 2-year, $40 million deal with the New York Jets with $30 million guaranteed. My first reaction is poor Justin Fields. Oh, God. Bears, Steelers, Jets. Jets who cut Aaron Rodgers, bring in a new head coach in Aaron Glenn. I like Justin Fields. I'm one of those guys. I'm a Justin Fields defender. I think he can play. I don't think he's great. He's a good athlete. Doesn't mean he's a great quarterback. There's a difference there. But anytime I see somebody go to the Jets, I just wince. Because I go, it's the Jets. They have to decide. Well, it's not really a decision. They should re-sign Garrett Wilson. They should re-sign Sauce Gardner, who both want new contracts. I don't know what to think. The Jets have a new quarter. I don't hate it. It's 2 years. You can very much get off of it quickly. The Jets, not going to be a playoff team. Although that division, it's weak. I want Justin Fields to be successful because I kind of like Justin Fields. I think he should have played more in Pittsburgh over Russell Wilson. That's another story for another day. We'll see. I don't love it. So there's other quarterback. Gardner Minshew goes to Kansas City. He's the new backup for Patrick Mahomes. Marcus Mariota goes back to Washington to back up Jaden Daniels, which he was last year. Perfect fit. They know each other. Zach Wilson signs a 1-year deal with the Dolphins to back up Tua. Yes, Zach Wilson, formerly of the Jets, was a third-string quarterback with the Broncos last year. He's now a Dolphin. Kenny Pickett gets traded from Philly to Cleveland for Dorian Thompson-Robinson and a 5th-round pick. And Kenny Pickett was told he very well could compete for the job in Cleveland, which is funny. Daniel Jones, formerly the Giants, went to Minnesota. We thought, okay, maybe he'll go back to Minnesota. He signs a 1-year, $14 million deal with the Indianapolis Colts, with 13.5 of that deal guaranteed. So basically that full contract guaranteed for 1 year for Daniel Jones. If you look like Mac Jones went to the 49ers, you got $7.5 million for 2 years with $3.5 guaranteed. Zach Wilson got $3 million guaranteed. Mariota, I think, got $3.5 guaranteed. So backups make about $3.5 to $4 million. Daniel Jones got $13.5 million. So that tells me that the Indianapolis Colts view him as a potential option and in a battle for a quarterback job with Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, who was benched last year for Joe Flacco. Anthony Richardson, who's was taken 4th overall for no real reason other than a huge arm and athletic ability because he only played 8 games in college. He's been hurt a lot, missed time, benched. Right now, Daniel Jones is a better quarterback than Anthony Richardson. He can run an offense better than Anthony Richardson. At his best, Daniel Jones got the Giants to the playoffs and he won them a playoff game. He has that on his resume. Do I think he's great? No, I don't. He's got a lot of things he can work on. He was horrible in New York last year, but that team sucked as well. But Anthony Richardson's so inconsistent. And the team's already told you what they think about him. They've already benched him. He was a 1st-round, 4th overall pick, and they benched him. This is fascinating. Indy, who are feeling the pressure, Shane Steichen in his 3rd year as head coach, 0 playoff appearances to this point. Chris Ballard, who's been the GM there for almost a decade, very limited success. They have to win this year. I think Daniel Jones will start week 1. Anthony Richardson, probably his last year in Indy. Josh Dobbs goes to the Patriots. Those are the big quarterback news. Oh, and Josh Allen got a $330 million extension with the Buffalo Bills, including $250 million guaranteed. Most guaranteed money ever. He's going to be making $55 million a year, still $5 million less per year than Dak Prescott on the as a cap hit. Dallas. So, quarterback news. Teams that I really like what they did. Let's start with the Patriots. Patriots had a lot of money to spend. New coach in Mike Vrabel. He wants to build a culture. He wants to build a tough team. First signing is Harold Landry III, a linebacker that he had in Tennessee. Knows the player. Harold Landry III was a Pro Bowler under Mike Vrabel. Brings him in on a 3-year deal. They then had Robert Spillane, he's just a fun player, Robert Spillane. So much energy, big hitter, can make a lot of things happen. And I think he fits into Vrabel's identity perfectly. I like Robert Spillane. Milton Williams played at Georgia on the Eagles, wasn't even a starter for them because they were so deep in defensive players. They bring him in 4 years, $104 million, 51 guaranteed. It's basically a 2-year deal with 2 opt-outs. So it's a lot of money, but also they think he can wreak havoc on offenses given the opportunity. They also bring in Morgan Moses, a new offensive lineman, and they bring in Mac Hollins, formerly of the Bills, who's just a good veteran receiver. Everybody seems to like Mac Hollins every team he goes to. So I like that for the Patriots. Good, just he's not a number one, but he's a big third down receiver. He makes a big catch all the time. And also Carlton Davis comes over from Detroit to pair with Christian Gonzalez as the 2 corners. They know have great corners. There's culture guys there. There's impact players. It's mainly defense. They have the 4th pick in the draft. They will be taking an offensive lineman, if I had to guess. Now, if Travis Hunter's available, maybe they draft Travis Hunter. Even if Travis Hunter was there, Kelvin Banks, the tackle out of Texas, hook him, good player. I like him. Physical force. You could have him. Will Campbell from LSU, another heck of a player. Could be a good addition to that. They need somebody. Now, you're not drafting somebody out of need. If you like the player, if you love Travis Hunter, take Travis Hunter. But with their 2 corners, I don't think Travis Hunter's a fit. If there's a great pass rusher and he's generational, then you take him. But otherwise, I think that they're looking at offensive line with the Patriots with the 4th overall pick. But I like the free agency period. I did. Let's see. Minnesota Vikings. They needed help on the offensive line. It was the biggest reason they lost in the playoffs. They addressed it. Will Fries was with the Colts, one of the best guards in football. He gets $60 million to come to Minnesota. And with him, they bring his teammate, center Ryan Kelly, to come to Minnesota. I like it. Jonathan Allen was released from Washington, multiple-time Pro Bowler. He goes to Minnesota, and they also re-signed their corner, Byron Murphy Jr. It's not sexy, but you build from the trenches. Minnesota, Sam Darnold's gone. J.J. McCarthy is their future at quarterback. They drafted him in the 1st round for a reason. They believe in him. He had to sit out all of last year because of a torn meniscus. They don't have a set backup, which is worrisome to me. The Aaron Rodgers rumors, I hate that. I don't want him in Minnesota. I don't want him on my team. But JJ, maybe it's Joe Flacco behind him. JJ McCarthy can play. I like what Minnesota's doing. They want to be competitive. They want to be a winning team again next year. Washington. Add Deebo Samuel from the 49ers. Acquire Laramie Tunsil from Washington for a number of draft picks. Add Javon Kinlaw from San Francisco, who they also had to release. San Francisco lost 11 guys in free agency. Zach Ertz comes back on a 1-year deal. Bobby Wagner comes back on a 1-year deal. Helping out Jaden. Give him a new receiver to work with. Another pass rusher. Bobby Wagner's still playing at a great level in that middle of that defense under Dan Quinn. They're a good team. They want to compete with the Eagles. They want to be on their level. They are not as good as Philadelphia yet. Even with, Philly losing Minton Williams and losing offensive linemen and pass rushers, I still look and go, Philly's still the best team in that division. Let's see. Denver. I like what Denver did. Playoff team last year. They had Hufanga from the Saints, who's a safety. You probably never heard of him. Good player. Give him 50. Dre Greenlaw comes over also from San Francisco. Really good linebacker. San Francisco might have won that Super Bowl against the Chiefs if he doesn't tear his Achilles running off the field. Good player. Evan Ingram, released from the Jaguars. He goes to Denver. Big target, really good at catching touchdowns. I think he'll work with Bo Nix. They've been weak at tight end in Denver for years. I like Evan Ingram. They're a good team already. They're kind of a sleeper team. They're not as good as the Chiefs, but they're better than the Raiders. They're the second best team in that division. I think they're even better. You could argue they're better than the Chargers, the Denver Broncos. I like what they're doing. Chargers add Najee Harris at running back. Khalil Mack comes back on a one-year deal. They need a receiver in the draft, the Chargers, because they lost Joshua Palmer to the Bills. The Bills also got Joey Bosa from the Chargers. Bills are good. Re-signed Greg Rousseau, Khalil Shakir, Terrell Bernard. Let's see. Giants, Steelers. Still don't have quarterbacks. Steelers brought back Mason Rudolph. Giants re-signed Tommy DeVito. Russell Wilson's visiting the Giants today. Seems like the Steelers are committed to signing Aaron Rodgers. They're just waiting him out. Otherwise, they're screwed. I don't know what the hell they're going to do. I don't know. Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, not a whole lot of difference. They're both kind of a pain in the ass. They're both over the hill. I think either could get the Steelers into the playoffs because Russell Wilson did it last year. I don't think either are good enough to win a Super Bowl. Pittsburgh added DK Metcalf from Seattle, then gave him a $150 million contract. Added Kenneth Gainwell from the Eagles at running back. Also added Darius Slay on a one-year $10 million deal from Philadelphia. Aaron Rodgers holding up the league, still hasn't signed anywhere yet. He's got everybody where he wants them. Which is, it's typical Aaron Rodgers. It's funny that teams let him get away with it, but they do. So, shame on them. I forgot about the Bears. New offensive line. Get Jonah Jackson from the Rams. Acquire Joe Thuney from the Chiefs. Give Drew Dahlman, the Falcons center, $30 million. And then they add Grady Jarrett, a pass rusher who got cut from the Falcons after 10 years. Give him $28 million guaranteed. I like that they were aggressive at getting they needed a new offensive line. They needed new players. They're not perfect yet. They could still add a body or two in the draft, but the Bears were aggressive. I like their approach. They're a good team. Helping out Caleb Williams. This weekend, we'll be waiting on Aaron Rodgers. Be watching a lot of NCAA tournament games. We'll be watching the Players' Championship, which is ongoing. Currently, Minwoo Lee is leading. He's at the tail end of his second round at 12 under, followed behind by J.J. Spawn, Rory McIlroy at 10 under, Morikawa, who was so close to winning last week at the Arnold Palmer. He's at 9 under, playing really good golf. So Fun couple rounds. I love this course. Love the Island Green 17. Fun to watch. A little under a month until the Masters. Unfortunately, we won't see Tiger Woods. We learned that he ruptured his Achilles, will need surgery, out a year. I don't know if he can come back. If anybody can, it is Tiger. We'll be tracking the games this week. I mentioned Dallas, Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado. So we'll talk about all of that on Monday's edition of Live and Learn. So until then, great to be back. Thanks for hanging out today. We'll talk to you on Monday night. I'm your host, Noah Warren, and this is the Live and Learn podcast.